I'm going to have to cut you off so Beth can say goodbye to you. I'm just going to go around and ask.
77 kids.
Wow.
Wait, say that again?
1,777 kids.
Right now? They're
1770.
No,
More than
that's
1776?
Yeah, but this has the potential to reach 50,000 kids. That's how many kids are involved in this.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yeah, so
Thank you so much, Beth.
I'm just going to go around and ask you two a question. I'll start with you, Jason, and Miles, and Jewell, and Inger. So we'll start in one moment. Get my jacket on.
Hello, lovelies.
Hi.
Miles, you
Yes.
need to send details about New York so I can figure out plane tickets and stuff.
Yeah. So
Miles, I love that so many people are going. I'm bummed. I don't know if I can go. I'm so on the fence about it. I really want to go because we haven't been able. It's like once I see so many people want to do it.
We're real live, folks. So
got it.
Okay, I'd like to welcome those of you who are joining us. It hasn't started yet. We just have a lively bunch here. So before we begin, but if you're with us for the first time, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A portal and we'll get to them as time allows. And special thanks to Beth Still-Radisick, whose efforts made this conversation possible. So stand by and we're about to begin. Hello, and welcome to FilmSlam Stream's post-film conversation for Voodoo Macbeth. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm a professor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We are very pleased to be joined by cast and crew from Voodoo Macbeth. First, we have the producers, Jason Phillips and Miles Alva. We also have two cast members, Ingrid Tudor, who played Rose McClendon, and Jewell Wilson-Bridges, who played Orson Welles. Hello to everyone and welcome.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for having us.
This is great to have the behind the scenes and front of the scenes people, but I know Inger and Jewell, you're most recognizable, but folks, hold on tight. I'm going to start behind the scenes first. Let's talk to Jason and Miles, the producers first. Jason, can you tell us who came up with this idea? How did this work? Because this is born out of the USC Film School. So just give us briefly a little bit of background how this production came together.
Yeah, so this is the 7th iteration of the feature film class at USC, and John Watson, who's the USC class coordinator, kind of helms the class from start to finish. And so he has a general concept of the idea that he wants to run with, this year being Voodoo Macbeth. And then 8 writers, I believe it was 8, come together at USC and then do like a writer's room to write the feature in about 6 months. And then at the end of that process, 10 directors of grad students are brought onto the project with 3 producers. And then we kind of work together to build the crew that's mostly USC alumni. And we shoot that following spring. We shot for about 25 days. So all in all, the whole project with the school section is both fall and spring semester. And then we spend the whole summer and the following fall in the post-production process. But really it comes from those writers that come together with John, and they have that writer's room, and they don't really know where the project's going to go when they first sit down. And then they kind of take it and all run with different threads, see what works and piece it together. There's a great story about one of the writers that they would bring in a scene, and then somebody would say, actually, no, I want to take a pass at that scene. And so they would each be sharing different scenes and trying to see what's the best way a plot line could play out. Miles, you can totally add in here with that, but that's kind of the general scope of how this whole thing works. It's kind of an abnormal process for making a feature, but it's also something that's so special to all of us because it taught us so much about collaboration and allowed so many different walks of life to bring their perspective to the table, which I think is very representative in the film.
Well, great. Yes, Miles, what can you add to that? Because you were currently at USC and Jason was an alum. So you're on the inside of it. How did it work from your perspective?
From my perspective, it worked very similarly. The only difference is that usually the positions outside of outside of writing and directing were reserved for alumni, but I was coming close. And so I talked with John Watson, and they let me do it as a student to produce the film. You know, Jason pretty much covered the beginning of how that works, but after that, when we hire the alumni, as Jewell was talking about earlier, giving us the credit for keeping it cohesive, really our department heads is where we really have to give credit to keeping it cohesive, because we hire a DP and a production designer, costume designer, and these people are the ones that keep it really cohesive throughout the whole project, because we have 10 directors. And it works similar how television works nowadays, where you have the same crew coming back and the same producers coming back for every episode, but you'll have a different director for each episode, but the TV show you're watching looks the same all the time. It feels like the same movie, right? So that's kind of the model that this class is building. And it's really nice, even though when I think, like Jason was saying, it's the 7th iteration. When it first was founded, I don't think that there was this huge TV model in the world that we were all used to. But now it's teaching us not only how to make a feature film, it's teaching us how to work in television as well. So it's a really great project. And I think it's going to have a long life now because of the TV model that it's also replicating.
Well, that's good. That's a really good model to have, to not only to train, but also to develop talent as well. Mm-hmm. Now, going over to you, Inger, how did you get involved with the project? Were you at USC, or did you respond to a casting call?
Well, I had actually, the year before I had done, actually the 2 years before, I had done 2 short films. One was through another special project that USC does. And then the second was from a director who had seen my work in that project and asked me to do a film. And then that short film, we went to a lot of festivals, won a bunch of awards. And so when John was putting together the table read for VOODOO MACBETH, that director reminded him, he's like, hey, you should talk to Inger to read Rose McClendon. So I was able to do the initial table read. And I was thrilled and amazed, because you think you know so much about history, and I lived in New York for 9 years, but I never heard of Rose McClendon. I didn't know about the Negro Theater Project. Like, I knew other things in the history of Black theater in New York, but to suddenly find all of this rich history, I was thrilled. It was very exciting.
Well, great. And you pulled that role off so well, especially working with multiple directors. Moving on to you, Jewell, same question. How did you get involved with this film?
Yeah, I was fresh off the boat in LA. I'd been a theater actor for 10 years. All of my connections were out on the East Coast. So I was just submitting myself like crazy to things. I remember I saw the breakdown pop up on Actors Access, and I almost didn't submit for it, because I was like, well, I don't really look like Orson Welles. Like I don't have, he's got a little bit chubbier face, he a little bit stockier body. He's got that really deep voice. But I reminded myself that, you know what? Like, if I'm not right, then they won't call me in. That's fine. But I felt like it was right energetically. I felt like it was really in the pocket when it comes to what feels good, what's right for me, and the kind of characters I portray. And thank God I did, because then they called me back a couple times, and then we were into production just like a few weeks later.
Well, great. No pressure there. You just had to play Orson Welles.
Well, on that note, I remember one of my first calls with Jason. He made a joke about me feeling free to eat as much as I like. And I was like, oh, boo, you don't know my metabolism. There's no way I'm going to be able to put on that much weight in just like few weeks. So for me as an actor, it actually freed me up, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to really be able to physically look like him in time for the production and with the cost and everything. I also knew that my voice is naturally higher pitched than what Orson's is. Like, when you actually go back and listen to him, he's got this really deep voice. So immediately I was like, I'm going to release the pressure of getting the physical details, like completely 100% correct. Instead, I'm going to focus on his personality, on the psychology, his spirit, the relationships. That is what I focused on. And so as an actor, I just did not have time. I really didn't have time to worry about all those things. And instead, I just focused on the character and trusted that if they cast me, then I was the right person that they wanted for the job. Like as actors, you can only do so much. And there just wasn't, it was a gift because I didn't have time to get in my head. I only had enough time to jump in and be willing to play. And thank goodness I did, because I just had the best time doing it.
You know, to piggyback off that, you know, when Jewell auditioned, we had another actor that actually looked a little bit more
Yeah.
like Orson, but his performance wasn't as strong, and it was nowhere near as dynamic as Jewell's was. And so we had a huge talk with the directors. This was like a multi-day conversation with the directors and with the producing team and with our casting director and executive producer, Twinkie. Oh, sorry. And it was just this conversation of like, do we go with the look or do we go with the performance? And then ultimately all of us were like, performance. Like at the end of the day, the look is something you see at the very beginning and then you kind of forget about it. You need to be able to believe Orson Welles' spirit and you need to feel the actor in there. And so ultimately that's kind of what we came down on. And we are so lucky to have both Inger and Jewell. And so that's just kind of a bit behind the scenes of the process of that, because it was a definite consideration for us in picking Jewell for the role.
Right, and I think it worked out well because Orson Welles is, this is more than a generation ago, so people don't have a fresh image of him. And like you said, the performance should outweigh the look in that sense. Okay, thanks for the sharing that, Jason. Moving over to Miles. This was a film about a production. How challenging was that? You're creating a film about a production. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the most challenging thing. So we had to build this really elaborate set for the stage. And we had students, we had a really great drawing student, Ari Bach. He drew the stage for us. He worked with our production designer. And then we worked with some set construction people to like have this whole thing built in pieces at another location on a stage at USC, and then brought there in pieces and assembled. And so when we first got there, our whole thing was like, okay, the production design team, the art team was like, we have to build this stage and shoot this whole movie backwards, because we have to, it's going to be too hard to start to build it. You need to kind of build it and then take it down, and eventually we'll get back to where we're the scenes that you see where we are where the stage is pretty empty, or it's just starting to be, they're practicing on the stage or rehearsing on the stage that just has a few things. So that was the plan, but it didn't work out. We got there and there was just no way in the world that time-wise and with the manpower that we had that we were going to be able
also a lot of other logistics that
Yeah,
had
there
to
was
come to
tons.
place, like with the finale, we weren't ready for it. Like there's a lot.
It was just too much, and that finale is a big undertaking. Obviously this is we had a collaboration with Warner Brothers on this. They helped us with a lot of things, but it's still to some degree a student film. And everyone knew that, everyone was involved. So it's a very much like all hands on deck type of film. So we scrapped that idea entirely because we would have wasted so much time. So we just started shooting immediately with a blank stage, so we could get stuff in the can. And then over time, we slowly had to build this stage. But with that, we had to stay long nights, come early mornings to build this stage. Everyone was there helping out, drilling, hammering.
We had to basically like deconstruct the stage every time we left the location for the weekend, because this theater was a working theater. So other people had to come in and use it on the weekends. And so we would have to deconstruct everything, push it all the way back, and then at the start of every week, bring it forward. And then we ended up having to do this like crazy jigsaw of a schedule to do some of the finale in the second week, because we still had to take apart the stage to work backwards again a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you can't really do like, when you're creating a show coming to life, you need the different stages of the set build, and you can't just build every single one. You have to like take down, because it's just more cost effective. And so it was a crazy challenge to kind of bring that to life in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of like thinking on our feet, changing different things, telling our actors, we're actually going to shoot this scene today. Are you ready? And then being like, I guess, like, if that's what you're gonna tell me.
The
Or
one
any
thing,
But you pulled it off. That's the great thing about it. And I guess that's the liberty about making a film about a production, because in production, lots of moving parts. So you had that to help you out. I just want to let everyone know we are talking to cast and crew from VOODOO Macbeth. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A portal and we'll get to them as time allows. Inger, over to you. Your role as Rose McClendon. Rose had this, kind of like a smart aleck kind of personality with these, one-liners and so forth. What did you do to prepare for that role? And did you improvise at all? Or were the directors really strict that you had to really stick to your script?
Well, to be honest, I thought the script was so well written, I didn't really need to improvise. I mean, and I was thrilled because I had the best snarky one-liners ever. So it made her a lot of fun to play. I think a lot of the preparation, I would say kind of like Jewell's, a lot of my preparation was because there's a certain amount that's known about Rose McClendon, and some of that material was in New York. And with, like Jewell said, the short amount of time between, finding out we're doing it and then starting to shoot, I wasn't able to do the kind of research I might have done otherwise. So I really think it was more important to focus on the relationship, to focus on how she was interacting with Orson Welles, what she wanted overall for this group of people and the production, and her own dreams, because her dream was to play Lady Macbeth. So, just trying to figure out what was driving her through the whole thing was what I tried to focus on.
Oh, good. Well, good. And you pulled it off. I'm going to ask you a little later to give us one of those one-liners, if you can remember. If not,
If I can remember one.
Yeah, I'll give you one a little later. But over to you, Jewell. Your role was obviously very challenging because your character went through transformations, with your wife battling, alcohol and trying to direct this play and so forth. So tell us a little bit about your preparation and also shooting out of order too. What was the experience like working on the film?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I think that's kind of a reality, I think, for most film sets and TV, is that you don't shoot it in order. So with a situation like that, there are certain, you develop a rapport with your cast, like the deeper in you get. So even looking back, I'm very, very proud of my work, and I'm really, really proud of our film. But there are a couple times I'm like, oh, like, that scene happened in the very beginning, and I might have done that I might have approached it a little bit differently if we had approached it on down the line. But I mean, you don't get that luxury as an actor. Instead, you have to do your best. And I knew the script, I knew the arc, I knew where we were, no matter, and I did extensive work with coordinating with our costume department and our makeup department when it came to continuity, because there were different points where his hair was like this and he had gotten punched in the eye, and it's like, oh, is the black eye at day 4 here, or is it at day 2? And I was very concerned about that kind of stuff, because while I knew that those departments, it was their responsibility, it's also mine. And the more eyes you have on something, the better. And it was very important for me to have that very clear, because I've been in a situation where I've been on set where we forgot to put on like a stage makeup or an injury, and we had to go back and reshoot. And I lost a take that I knew was great, and I learned my lesson. And that was a short that I did. And I learned my lesson on that. And I've always kept my eye on those kinds of things. But you asked another question beyond shooting in order.
About your experience overall, which you gave us a good sense of.
Oh yeah, my experience shooting it was really incredible. I was so grateful and so excited to do this project. There were a lot of conversations, like from the get-go, from the read-through, and I, especially with the subject matter, and with Orson being this white leader, and especially with everything going on in our world, before I read the script, it was very important for me to see, okay, how are we setting up Orson? Is he coming in thinking he's going to be like the savior of this community, or is he going to end up giving it back? And inevitably he does. There was concern for me with how his own mistakes and how his own sins are they absolved? Does he, because he loses his cast because he does some really racially insensitive, puts it in a very like subdued way, but he does some things that are completely unacceptable and not okay. How do you come back from that? There was concern for me of, with Orson, there was always like a fine line because yes, there was the abuse. Yes, there was like the drug abuse, but if you go too far with it, you can potentially not only lose his cast in the show, but also lose the audience. And it was important for me to navigate that. And from the way I was coming at it was that Orson never was doing things to intentionally hurt anybody. He was just so caught up in his narcissism and his journey and his brilliance that he completely walks over people, and inevitably he learns the importance of collaboration. And by the end, he does give it back to the community who it should serve, and it should be their vessel, and it shouldn't be about him. But those kinds of questions, also considering our current political climate, were really important. And I'm so grateful for all of our cast, for our writers, for our directors, because everybody handled that with sensitivity and everybody's voices were included. And I was really proud with how it was really shaped in the story that we told as a result.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and especially just living up to knowing what Orson Welles would become after that. So he had to be careful on how his character was shaped.
He also was 20 years old. It still blows my mind. He did this production at 20. What, I mean, all of you kids looking at this, that's, for a lot of you, that's only a few years away from where you're at. It's so bizarre to me. Sometimes I think, man, I guess it was just like a different time. But that really, it really speaks to the cojones that he has, like the confidence that he had. Like he was the kind of kid that at 16 walked into a professional Shakespeare thing and pretended to have all this experience, and they knew he was BSing them, but they gave him an audition anyway, and he blew them out of the water. Like, so the whole myth of Orson Welles is based on real truth and substance. But it still amazes me. I always have to remind myself, he was 20 when he did this, and this was arguably one of his greatest hits commercially of his entire career.
Indeed, I mean, you're meaning for his resume, and including Citizen Kane too.
Yes, well, I mean, Citizen Kane is one of his greatest hits, but when you looked at like the box office and how much like he reaped, at least in the short term, one of the things he often said was that Voodoo Macbeth was one of his greatest successes. It ran for a long time. It had an successful tour. There wasn't any kind of, even though there was controversy leading up to its opening, once it opened and toured, there was so much praise. But this came from his mouth that he really believed that Voodoo Macbeth was one of his greatest successes in his career.
Right, great. We do have one question that has come in. I'll ask that in a moment. Before I ask that question, I just want to know, maybe Jason or Miles, you can answer this. How truthful was the script? Did the writers put anything in there just to make it a little more dramatically appealing, or did you really stick to the facts that you found out through your research?
I'll go first, Jason, then you can follow up. So it's, with every story that you're telling from the past, you want to sort of pull it forward to the current day to kind of examine the world that we're living in now. So I think that was the writer's objective in this. So yes, there's definitely some fabrications. There's definitely some storylines that are dramatized and stuff like that. But it's more to reflect the current day that we're living in. It kind of goes back to what Jewell's saying, is like, how are we shaping Orson Welles to reflect like today? We don't want to, we want to be careful of how we do things. So yes, there's some fabrications in this story. to kind of reflect on those times. You know, there's an immigration subplot that had some truth to it, had some facts that helped us get to that point. But I'm not sure if it's exactly true that the original Wano was, you know, taken for immigration and stuff like that. But we wanted to kind of pull forward, like when you have a character like Martin Dies, who is like a politician with an agenda. And we still, at this time, we have politicians with agendas that might use their power to do certain things and derail certain things in order for, you know, for their personal gain or for their political agendas to, you know, go in the direction that they wish. So yeah, but for the most part, we stayed as true as we could to the facts and to the history. And yeah, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, a big conversation for us was making a 1936 story told through a 2020 lens. And that was a big choice for all of us going into it. And it was extremely important for us. I think, like, you know, like Miles said, there's always some dramatization that happens when retelling true stories. Life, as interesting as it is, sometimes needs a little bit of a kick to make it a narrative feature. And to condense things, like there's a lot of condensing of timelines here that kind of change things around or pulling from Orson's different parts of his life and kind of things like that. So yeah, there's some definite changes around there, but I think we tried to stay true to the heart and the truth of that story. And that was kind of our guiding force with that throughout the whole thing. But we did a ton of research, like the production design team, like the books that you would see from our production designer Maureen Jensen when she was preparing for this was insane. John Watson and the writers had like a stack of research. Before we even started shooting, I actually went to New York and Harlem and walked around where the Lafayette Theater used to be, walked blocks all around just to kind of see where would Rose walk, where would Houseman walk, where would Orson walk, and just like feel the environment. So there was a lot of research involved in how we were telling the story, and it was very conscious in what we were doing, and everything was very specific in the retelling.
Right, great. I'm just going to throw this question out to anyone that's come in, and just bear with me as I read through it. This person was wondering, how do you feel about the new, in quotes, New Deal kind of funding during this tough time here in America? Do you have hope that rich artistic work will come from relief funding we are seeing that has come out of the COVID devastation, and that we will see a new gilded age of the arts? So,
great question.
Anyone want to try to tackle that question?
You know, that there used to be a real endowment of the arts here in the country, and over the years that got slashed. You've seen, not to get into politics, and I won't, but there's a lot of people in this country that I think that look at the arts as very frivolous. Like in comparison to where we could put our dollars, there are things that are better put. And quite frankly, when you look at other countries value art based upon the kind of government funds that they put towards it. I think a lot of that also speaks to the history of our own country, how we were founded, and the kind of value system there is, and other countries that have been around for a lot longer and that have birthed a lot of classic antiquity art. They value it so much because it's just been in their bones and their life for so long. I think that there absolutely is a possibility for those things to develop. And I am like you guys, I am very hopeful that as a result of the climate, that other government agencies and other interests will funnel money into arts funding, not just for education purposes, but also professionally. I think because all of those things feed into itself. If nothing else, when you look at the budget when you look at New York and how much money an entity like Broadway actually brings in, and how it fuels the economy of a city of New York when it comes to other businesses, you can make a lot of really great warrant that arts is not just for entertainment, that it does fuel economies and it develops that stuff. So I'm very hopeful with all of you guys. I think it's a matter of wait and see. And I will say that if you really feel that that is important, it really, in my opinion, those kinds of changes don't really start in Congress. Those kinds of changes starts at the local level. You know, it comes about how do we pass down to our local communities the importance of arts. So if you feel that way, really get involved in the arts communities in your local sphere. As you get older, really pass down the importance of art to your kids and the people around you, because as those grassroots things change, the legislation will change and follow it. So that's kind of how I feel.
Well, great.
For me,
Well said. Well said.
for me, art is born from like a deep like self-introspection and like, reflection on who you are. And like I feel like this last year has given a lot of us time to understand in a deeper way who we are because we've been by ourselves for so long. And I think we're actually going to be experiencing a whole different wave of art because a lot of people are coming out of this with a whole new mindset of the way they want to live their life. Also, people are craving art right now. That's one of the things we're really deprived of. Like, I have museum tickets for this Van Gogh museum in LA for December because I'm just so excited to be able to go to this. And I'm hoping that December will be like everything's great, you know? So I think there is a huge wave coming of just artistry and individualism that's going to be shown through artistry in a very cool way that I'm personally very excited for. And I'm excited to see the stories that come out of what people have been thinking about for this past year. Because we've all had some deep revelations, whether we like to admit it or not. It's
Right.
been a challenging year. So I think that's, you know, different. It's not necessarily have to do anything with the government, but with your own self, I think we're going to be experiencing a lot of cool art coming.
I concur.
I
Go ahead, Ingrid.
No, I was just going to say, I will say one thing that I think has happened during the pandemic, which I think is wonderful. And as much as I prefer doing things live, suddenly we all have more access to more things that we would not normally be able to see, whether it's theater, whether it's exhibits, because they found a way to put them online, to stream them. So I think in some way, the pandemic has been, I don't want to say like the great equalizer, but it's given more people access to things that don't require getting on a plane, flying to New York and seeing this Broadway show or seeing a show at the National or seeing a special exhibit. You can actually see it online. Now, is it as good as seeing it in person? You know, I don't know that I would say that, but suddenly more people have access to it. And I think that's the most important thing about art, because like they were saying, it is the lifeblood. I mean, so many things that are important to our well-being as humanity. I think that art encapsulates and inspires. So the more you can bring art to the masses, for lack of a better way to put it, I think the more important that is. And as Jewell was also saying, I think as you all are students and as you grow up, you have to insist on things, but even where you are now, make sure your parents know, make sure your administrations know, you need art in the schools, you need art in all these spaces, and they're trying to take it away. And in some places, it's not even trying to take it away, it's gone. So you have to let people know the importance of what it's done to you, how it's affected you, the ways it's helped you to grow, so that we can continue to have it for everyone.
Students, real quick, when you're watching art as a result of all of you guys being in pandemic, not connecting with one another, and I know we're all grown up in a digital world with social media, but when you are back in a group, when you're watching a performance, when you're engaging with an art, take a moment and step back and just clock how your experience of that art or that moment or that performance has changed because of the people that you're with, because one of the unsaid things, you experience it far more with like theater, but you also experience it with film, that the audience changes oftentimes the experience of that art. When you go to see a play, like different audiences will laugh harder and more uproariously. And the show itself doesn't change that much, but the audience does. If nothing else, I think this time really encapsulates how being with one another, experiencing things with each other, absolutely changes the way we remember it and the way we receive it. So I really encourage each of you, when you're back in that position, take a moment and really just register how magical it is, and how looking at that painting or listening to that song or seeing that movie changed based upon the people that you were around, and let that empower you to seek out and experience more things like that.
Some very, very good information, good and advice too. We need to wrap up here now. As we wrap up, I'm just going to go around and find out what's next for all of you. Let me start with you, Inger. Well, what can we expect to see from you in the future?
Well, I just finished directing a play at USC. Somehow USC has seemed to grab hold of me. But I just directed a play by a young Black female playwright who's from the British Virgin Islands, and it's called The Blood of a Hibiscus. So that's showing tonight and tomorrow afternoon through the New Works Festival at USC. And we'll see what else is coming. I've got some other stuff up my sleeve that I'm not ready to talk about yet.
Okay, but if we see you in front of the camera and you had to audition and you had to give a line from VOODOO Macbeth, what line would you say?
Oh, I think one of my favorite lines is Orson is talking about Cuba and he says, oh, he has stage presence. And Rose says, he is presently on stage. That's the extent of his stage presence.
Okay. Exactly. That's one of the key lines that was there. And thank you for delivering that. Over you, Jewell. Well, what's next for you? What can we expect to see from you?
There were a couple of things that I was supposed to start shooting, and then the pandemic hit that have been delayed. I can't speak about them presently, but I'm excited to be able to shoot those pretty soon. And in the meantime, I'm just so thrilled that our little engine that could is making its circuit on the film circuit, on all the film festivals. And I'm so excited that you guys are experiencing it. It's such a pleasure.
Okay, great. Okay, and Miles, what about you?
Same with Jewell. I have a few films in development that I can't talk about yet, but I hope to let the world know soon. But I also very happy that this film is making on the film circuit. I made another film with one of the directors who was supposed to be with us today, but he had something come up. His name is Agazi, and it just got into Tribeca, and so we're excited about that. And that'll be this coming up this summer in New York. And it also got into the HBO festival in Martha's Vineyard. So we're very excited about that as well. And yeah.
Okay, great. Good luck. And Jason.
Yeah, so I have a few projects as well. Jewell and I are working on a musical together, which has been really fun. And I'm just currently writing a lot of projects. I have a short that's going in the festival circuit as well. And just trying to see what happens. I'm really passionate about making stories for the LGBTQIA plus community and empowering the LGBT youth as well. So that's kind of a big focus of a lot of the work that I've been doing right now. And to all the students, like if you guys do have any other specific questions, feel free to reach out. I don't know how you can contact us, but if there's a way you can get to us, please, like I'm always here for you guys. And if you want to be a filmmaker and actor, like just go for it and do it. That's my best piece of advice is you just got to make the leap and the jump because there's nothing holding you back. You just got to trust yourself and know that it will be okay.
Based on that, you can find Jason on Instagram. Jason, what's your handle on Instagram?
Oh my gosh, Jason Lee Phillips _film.
That was my next question. Yeah, so all of you on social media. If so, can you tell us how we can find you? Because someone wants to know how they can access your work and so forth. Jewell, are you on social media?
I am. You can message me and find me at my Instagram handle at Jewell Wilson Bridges. The most uninteresting handle, but it's my name.
What about you, Miles? Are you?
Yeah, you can find me. It's at Miles_Alva.
Okay, and what, Inger?
And yeah, Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Inger Tudor.
Oh, wonderful. So hey, you might get a lot more followers after this. So
You can also contact us at the VOODOO Macbeth film website. And
Yeah.
there's an email on that website. And if you email that, it will come directly to us and we can connect you with anyone that you're interested in talking with.
I think you can also pretty much Google any of us, and I think you'll find other ways to contact us as well. So
Yeah.
there's lots of ways.
right. And has USC announced their next film that they're doing? Yeah.
Yes, I think so. So COVID pushed the last film, but they think they're ready to do it this fall, and it's going to be Phantom of the Opera, or a take on Phantom of the Opera at least. I think Jewell, are you involved in that one?
Yeah, I am. So, and unless I book something else, I was gonna do the Phantom. I even got like the casting for the mask, and then pandemic hit. So I'm still waiting. We're still waiting for like final confirmation. But right now it's the Amorphous. Yes, it's happening.
So Jewell, you're being cast as the Phantom?
Yes. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
going back to kind of the source. It's going back to the source material. It's not like a musical telling like
Right.
the Phantom of the Opera musical. It is a film, but it should be really cool. I mean, the script was really cool.
I
Last time.
bet. I bet. Wow. Can't wait to see that. Well, this has been such a pleasure, all of you. I thank you all for taking time out and joining us today. We had the producers, Jason Phillips and Miles Alva, and two cast members, Inga Tudor, who was Rose McClendon, and Jewell Wilson Bridges, who was Orson Welles. Thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for
Eric.
having us.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about the current 45th Cleveland International Film Festival or any of our upcoming film festivals, please continue to follow us on social media or visit clevelandfilms.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.